So, today we're going to dive into an analysis of Washington state, which one source calls the gold standard for a pretty radical idea. What if you could combine the tax efficiency of a tax haven with the social benefits of, say, Scandinavia? I mean, how is that even possible, right? Let's dig in. Okay, so this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It's the central question. Can a state actually provide high-quality public services without an income tax? And for most of us, that just sounds impossible. You need tax money for good services, and income tax is usually the biggest piece of that pie. If you ask most economists, they'd say, no way, you simply can't do it. But the analysis we're breaking down today makes this really bold claim that Washington state has actually figured it out. They found a unique way to crack the code. And this model has a name, Market Equitism. The basic idea, really, is to fund all the public stuff we need in the most efficient way you can, so you cause the least amount of economic damage while still delivering a strong social safety net. It's an attempt to get the best of both worlds. All right, so how does this whole model actually work? The first pillar, according to this analysis, is all about having a radically efficient tax code. Let's break down how Washington actually pays for things. It really boils down to three core principles, and they're pretty powerful when you put them together. First, don't tax work. Second, make polluters pay for the damage they cause. And third, go after extreme financial gains, but in a very, very targeted way. Now, the absolute cornerstone of this whole thing is this: a 0% personal income tax. The argument here is that this is absolutely critical. By letting people keep every dollar they earn from their job, the state keeps the incentive to work as high as possible. That encourages productivity, which helps grow the whole economy for everyone. Okay, so if you're not taxing people's paychecks, where on earth does the money come from? Well, a huge chunk of it, we're talking over $2 billion, comes from the state's cap and invest carbon market. This is what's called a Pagovian tax, which is just a fancy term for a tax that makes businesses pay for the negative side effects they create. In this case, pollution. But here's what's really interesting about that money. It doesn't just get thrown into some big government pot. By law, it has to be reinvested into projects that fight climate change and improve public transit, and it specifically has to go to the communities that have been most harmed by pollution in the past. It's a really efficient way of recycling wealth. All right, the third piece of the puzzle is a capital gains tax. But get this, look at this number. It only affects less than 0.2% of all taxpayers. It's a 7% tax, but it's designed to only hit a tiny, tiny fraction of people who are making huge profits from their investments. And here's the secret sauce for why it's so targeted. The tax is loaded with exemptions for the things the middle class relies on to build wealth. Selling your house, you don't pay. Your retirement accounts like a 401k or an IRA, totally exempt. Profits from your small business, mostly exempt. Plus, you don't pay a dime until your profits in a single year go over a really high bar, around $262,000. Okay, pillar number 2, monetizing the land. This is where we get into Washington's pretty unique approach to property taxes, which, becomes super important when you don't have an income tax to fall back on. So this is the key distinction you gotta understand. Most places have a rate-based system. The tax rate is fixed, so if home values shoot up, the government gets a massive surplus. If they crash, public services get cut. Washington does the opposite. It's budget-based. They decide the budget first, how much they need to spend, and then the tax rate adjusts to meet that number. This gives them way more stability and automatically makes sure that as land becomes more valuable, the public gets to benefit. All right, that leads us right into pillar number 3, housing. The analysis we're looking at argues that Washington has basically embraced a full-on YIMBY, or yes in my backyard revolution. It's this super aggressive push to make housing more affordable by, well, deregulating the market. And you can see on this timeline, this wasn't an overnight thing. It's been a long-term strategy. Years ago, the state blocked cities from putting in strict rent control, which many argue kills the motivation to build new housing. Then in 2023, they made a huge move to basically ban single-family-only zoning. And now, even their new protections for renters are smartly designed to exempt new buildings. So there's always a big incentive to keep building more. So the last pillar of this market equitism model, it's not just about money and taxes. The source calls it a deep commitment to building a fortress for liberty, which is all about maximizing social and personal freedom. And they do this by writing these key rights directly into state law, basically shielding them from whatever happens at the federal level. We're talking about everything from protecting reproductive and LGBTQ+ rights to being one of the first states to legalize physician-assisted dying. This philosophy also covers legalizing cannabis and shifting drug policy towards treatment instead of punishment.
Okay, so we've looked at tax, land, housing, and liberty. Let's pull it all together now. What does this market equitism model look like when you see all four pieces working together?
This table does a great job of summing it all up. You've got a tax system designed for maximum efficiency by not taxing labor. You've got a land policy that creates stable revenue. You've got a housing policy focused on deregulation to create affordability. And you've got a social policy that codifies freedoms to maximize personal autonomy. And all of this leads to the source's really powerful final claim that Washington state has perhaps uniquely managed to combine the tax efficiency you'd expect from a tax haven with the social safety net and personal freedoms you'd find in Scandinavia.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last really big question. Is the Washington model, as it's laid out here, a blueprint that other places could actually copy? Or is it just a really delicate, maybe even one-of-a-kind experiment that just happens to work there?